We're back from the weekend on Locked On Coyotes. The Tucson Roadrunners had a very quick exit from the Calder Cup playoffs. We're going to talk about their series with the Coachella Valley Firebirds on today's episode of the Locked On Coyotes podcast.
You're Locked On Coyotes, your daily podcast on the Arizona Coyotes, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Welcome, everyone, to today's episode of Locked On Coyotes, brought to you by Game Time. We got a great show for you on today's episode. The Tucson Roadrunners had a very quick stint in the Calder Cup playoffs as a 7 seed in a division. But hey, you know what? That's a discussion for later, or from last week, if you want to turn back to that. But it was very quick, Carl. A 3-game series, a best of 3. The Roadrunners were able to take one game out of Coachella Valley, but ultimately, it really just was no surprise of this series. I think I had low expectations going in, and I'm not disappointed. I think I think this is right around where we expected here.
Yeah, it's definitely one of those situations. I don't think anyone really had the Roadrunners taking the series. I think when they evened it up in the second game, they're like, "Oh, hey, it's a best of 3 series. Anything can really happen," and that's true. I like best of 3. That's madness in terms of a hockey series. But the team that everyone expected to win won, and I think you can be proud that there was some growth with the Roadrunners.
Oh, absolutely. Look, you had the Roadrunners up against a Coachella Valley Firebirds team that was just, unbelievably good. This is what one of, and I won't say the, but one of the best teams in the American Hockey League this year. A team that has, Shane Wright, on their team. A team that has Joey DeCord, ASU grad, as their goaltender.
Yeah. Joey DeCord, who has gotten a couple of decent NHL starts. It definitely was going to be a tough matchup, and I wouldn't want to play against Shane Wright in the playoffs. That does not sound fun.
Oh no, it doesn't. I was hopeful for a lot of things going into this series. Like, I had the conversation with JD last week before the series started. We released it on right before the series started on last Wednesday. Look, like we know what these two teams are. We know where this is going to go. I said I was optimistic in the sense that I said it's going to be two things, like two versions of me, two predictions. There's the optimistic version of me. The Roadrunners are going to take one game and then force the game 3, and that's it. Yeah. The realistic version of me says this is going to be a 2-game sweep. Looks like the optimistic version was right, but the realistic version still had a skin in the game in the sense that we knew what to expect. We knew that it was going to be especially if you look at this final score for game 3, it was a 5-1 game. It's in 4. Let's put it this way: 4 goals in 5 minutes, or whatever it was.
Well, let me ask you this, because it was a 5-1 loss. The Roadrunners' lone goal came very late. I think I saw 3 minutes left on the clock, power play.
Mm-hmm.
Do you, if you're in that locker room, is that something where you're like, hey, we didn't get shut out. We knew that there was a chance we weren't even going to make it here. We went the distance. What are your thoughts?
I think that's definitely something to think about. I think I know a lot of people in that Roadrunners locker room, they hate the moral victories, or they hate those
Sure.
smaller victories. Like, hey, look, at the end of the game, at the end of the day, we want to win. We want to win the
Yeah.
trophy. We want to win the Calder Cup. A lot of them are probably upset that they won't. But a lot of them got good experience of being in playoff hockey. Um, this is a completely different team than the Tucson Roadrunners team of 2018 that made the playoffs.
Yeah.
Very few people, if anything, if any, I believe, were on that same team. Um,
I'm trying to think. I'm going down the list. Was Crowdy?
no, I do not believe Crowdy was. Um,
He's kind of like the oldest player I can think of for that one.
I'm looking at the roster right now, and I think maybe Ryan McGregor. I think, and that's it.
Let's see. Ryan McGregor. Looks like nah. First season 2018-19 with the Marlies. Or yeah. His only playoff experience is this previous series and 2021.
So none of these players had playoff experience.
Yeah.
So again, an expectation to that you had to go into, um, and you know what? I'm glad they at least made the playoffs.
Yeah. Like the Coyotes didn't make the playoffs. There should be like a successful team in your program. That just makes sense for everything. And the people of Tucson, like they could use a good team.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, there are players on the Roadrunners who I would like to get that experience. Like you want Josh Stone to get meaningful hockey games.
Right.
You want Victor Soderstrom to it. um you know there are definitely like players who got experience who are going to be on the Coyotes or potentially not going to be signed. I think this is a good evaluation game for Bill Armstrong.
Oh, absolutely. There'll definitely be based off what we saw here, you're going to see some decisions made at this point. In a little bit, though, we're going to continue to break down the Roadrunners series against the Coachella Valley Firebirds, as well as a breakdown of their season. Some thoughts. I'm going to share some thoughts on how they performed, some disappointments, some surprises on today's episode of Locked On Coyotes. But first, let's take a quick word from our sponsors on the show.
So a couple years back, I really wanted to see a band, but it was not firm plans. I ended up waiting to the last minute because I didn't know if I was going to have anyone to go with. Turns out I did. All of a sudden, I need to rush to get a ticket. And buying tickets for your favorite events shouldn't be stressful. That's why Game Time is a fast and easy way for you to buy tickets for all sports, music, comedy, and theater near you. I'm actually looking at Game Time right now. They have Christopher Titus, who is one of my favorite stand up comedians, playing at Stand Up Live this upcoming May. Definitely something I'm going to look at because with Game Time, you get flash deals and last minute tickets. Plus, you get the image from the seat view. You can see exactly where you're going to be in the arena at the show. It's perfectly great. It's the place to get last minute ticket deals. So snag tickets without the stress with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use the code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest prices guaranteed.
So let's continue this conversation about the Tucson Roadrunners and their short Calder Cup run and their just overall season. And Carl, I'll go ahead and just say a couple things. Is I'm not like I said, I'm not disappointed with the overall outcome. But I am disappointed on some of the decisions that were made before uh, before the playoffs. And here was one. You did not the Coyotes organization did not paper transaction a waiver eligible Matias Maccelli to be able to go down to Tucson and be a powerhouse down there in the Calder Cup playoffs. Like, I do not understand. They traded away Cam Dineen and Dyson Mayo, two integral pieces to the Coyotes to the Roadrunners defense, to kind of leave them dry. They did get Michael Kesselring, but like, outside of that, like, Soderstrom isn't fantastic in the AHL level, but he's great at the NHL level. It there's I feel like the entire trade deadline was so focused around getting rid of the players that we talked about over the course of that trade deadline, that the Roadrunners were very extremely heavily overlooked.
I, I can definitely understand that. I think that it was a business decision, and if you are Bill Armstrong and Matias Maccelli has had the season that he's had, you're thinking to yourself, I don't want him to get hurt in the AHL playoffs. He's already been hurt. He had a great season. Just rest him up. It's that rest versus rust
Yep.
argument. I can definitely, he could have been a difference maker.
Here,
Like,
here's the question though. What would have been at least the hurt in paper transactioning him? At least make him eligible in the case that's like, hey, you know what? Let's see what happens.
I think at that point, like, because he has been in the NHL the entire season, I think. At that point, they're like, no, he is an NHL guy. We are not going to risk him on a playoff game in the AHL.
I mean, that is fair. I think maybe at that point in the season they knew the Roadrunners weren't going to make a deep run.
Yeah.
Especially when Coachella Valley and Texas and Colorado and Calgary are all just like killing the game right now. They're dominating the Western Conference.
I mean, it's definitely one of those things where if you look at the players who were on the Coyotes who could have been sent down, like, they are in the hunt for a contract. They are looking to show what they can do. They're looking to make that last effort. Matias Maccelli is not that. He has gone up another level. And you're right. If they don't think that the team is going to be going on a deep run, there's not that much experience. Like, why bother? It sounds like it is definitely the Coyotes putting their needs before their AHL team. And you can argue whether or not that is a good thing to do, but I think that that is what happened.
I mean, which is fair. You have to look at it in that business sense, and that you have to worry about the big club before you worry about the little one.
Yeah.
And I think what, like, the not thinking about that was the downfall of the Cheka era. Because, like, if you look at it, yeah, he did some work, he did some moves for the Coyotes and did what they could, but like, if you saw some of his teams on Tucson, he stacked that Tucson team.
Yeah.
And I don't think and I think maybe it hindered development of some people in Tucson. Not a whole lot of people, but some people in Tucson, because like they weren't able to get the meaningful reps that they were able to get.
Yeah. Which, I mean, I think that is one of the reasons why they went with a younger coach for the Coyotes, who is going to be more comfortable with bringing players up, not overcooking them. Uh, let me just say this. I think if Matias Maccelli had not had as good a season as he had, there would have been a bigger chance that he would have been sent down. I think that the only players who were sent down were ones that they are evaluating for future with the team. I kind of wish Soderstrom was not in that category, but I think at this point he kind of is.
Yeah, I mean, I think for Soderstrom's benefit, he still has one more year under his contract.
That's good.
So he still has another year to prove that he belongs. Uh, I think the Roadrunners, they do need, like, I do believe that John Ferguson Jr. Does need to focus a little bit on making sure the Roadrunners can put out a team that's competitive next year.
Yeah,
Because I think a team that competitive is only going to help, Dylan Gunther, should he be down there, which I think he will be for a little bit,
yeah.
as well as Josh Doan. I think those two players will benefit immensely from a better Roadrunners team.
Yeah. Also, players like Kolyachonok. I think he would benefit from a Roadrunners team. That Kesselring. I'm not sure what the team's plans are for him, but he had good goal numbers in the AHL, if I recall. So I think that he was acquired for a reason. Yeah, you always want your development league to be developing your players correctly.
Yeah. Now here's another thought process I want to bring by to you. Um, Ivan Prospatov. How long are we, like? Do we give him? Like, what do you think? Like, do you think it's worth giving him another year? Because he did some reps in Arizona at the Coyotes,
Yeah.
but do you think it's deserved to give him another shot?
That is, I think, the $1 million question right now. What are the Coyotes going to do with goaltending? And it seems like Prosvetov may have taken a spot, and Ingram is on the way out. Um, I think Craig Morgan had a PHNX article where that was suggested as a possibility. Um, I, I'm not sure.
Here's my belief about Prospatov is I believe he is a adequate or like a fine goaltender. Like, I don't think he's good, and I don't think he's bad.
Yeah.
He's fine. He does the job. I think he is definitely will be a functional backup, but I don't see him, at least at this point, going much past that.
Which I, I don't know. Is the team going forward with the Melka as the starter and a more traditional starter? Because I thought Ingram started rough, but
Right.
finished strong. I do kind of wonder, like, does Ingram have a higher ceiling than Prosvetov? You said good backup. Is Connor Ingram the kind of goalie who could potentially be a starter? I'm not sure about that either. Um, no one's really like claimed the spot yet. It's very interesting.
It is very interesting. And we'll kind of like break that down in just a moment, kind of get our final thoughts. But first, a quick word from our sponsors. So let's go ahead and kind of look at things overarching, Carl, and talk about, like, looking at the future of the Roadrunners and thus the future of the Coyotes. Because yeah, we talked about Prospatov and what role he's going to play. Who knows what the Roadrunners goaltending situation is even going to look like next year as well.
Yeah.
Um, you know, I'm really curious what the defense is going to look like next year. Because we talked about in the last segment and earlier on the show of what role is Soderstrom going to play, what role is Koyachonik going to play, and Kesselring. Outside of that, though, outside of those three players, like, I have a hard time seeing like who's going to make an impact. I mean, honestly, I have a hard time believing those three players are really impact players as a whole. Like,
Yeah.
they haven't proved anything to me yet. And I think that's why, and I mentioned earlier, I was really disappointed in the trading of Cam Dineen and Dyson Mayo. I think they were key members of the Roadrunners defense. Were they great? No, they were good. They weren't great. Um, but they did enough to kind of be a really important part to that defense for so many years. If I asked earlier, are there any members of the Coyotes or of the Roadrunners who were part of that 2018 team that made the playoffs? If Deneen and Mayo were still on the team, they would have been the only two. That's
And
the thing, because you needed like veteran leadership, and they didn't have that.
yeah, and I can see moving out your veteran AHL defenseman if you think that there's going to be like a big prospect coming up who can take that spot. All right. And I think the Coyotes' defensive prospects are one of the weakest elements that we continue to come back on. Like going back to last year's draft, where I think we both came to the conclusion they probably should have focused a little bit more on defensemen.
Absolutely. And I feel like that's gonna come back to haunt them over the
Yeah.
next couple of years.
I definitely see that being an issue. But the good news is if you are looking for like veteran AHL guys, you can get those. Like they're not going to have that same history, but you can find like some good AHL leadership defensemen. Like
Hmm.
and just know like yeah, they're not going to be call ups, but they're going to be good guys in the room. They're going to be, maybe get a cup of coffee. I do think the Coyotes are going to get that because the blue line's looking kind of weak. I'm not sure what they're going to be doing overall, but it seems like it's going to be getting a lot of attention this offseason.
It should get a lot of attention this offseason.
It absolutely
Kind of,
needs to.
yeah. I think if they don't, I will be severely disappointed. But that said, I think if I have to look at a bright spot for the Roadrunners going into next year, kind of thing to look something to look forward to. The offense is, you know, gonna look pretty good next year. I mentioned Dylan Gunther probably gonna get some reps down there next year.
Yeah.
Josh Doan is getting his reps down there. He's getting started his reps, in the latter part of this season. And they are going to be coached up essentially, and kind of like in a, they're going to get a veteran from Michael Carcone and JSD. Like JSD, like to be, because he's the oldest man, he'd be the oldest member of the team at this point. Kind of, he's been around the AHL for long enough. But Carcone, in terms of look, you got a skilled guy like Carcone leading the team, especially guys like Josh Doan and Dylan Gunther. Like, I think I can fully trust a guy who was the leader in AHL points this past season. On
So that does beg the question though. Is Carcone going to be with the Roadrunners next season?
I think he'll probably start with the Roadrunners this season, in the next season, because I feel like, I mean, yes, I'd love to see him with the Coyotes, because I think he can really he can make an impact on a fourth, third line. But I believe he's got, like, he can really play an important leadership role, with these future stars coming in. I wouldn't
Yeah.
consider him. I'm going to use star lightly, especially with Josh Doan, because, like, look, he carries the name of his dad, but he's also a good hockey player.
Yeah.
But he's not going to be like a top six forward. He's going to be right there in the middle six, I believe. But like, still,
That's kind of where I see Doan right now. He always has the chance to kind of surprise me. I'm just looking at the Coyotes cap friendly to kind of see what kind of turnover we're looking at. In terms of UFAs, there are only two, in Laurent Dauphin and Brett Ritchie. Uh, Something just tells me Dauphin is going to end up with the Coyotes organization again somehow.
uh-huh.
You get three RFAs in Fisher, McBain, Michelli. So those look to be locks. So is there going to be room for Carcone? Does he need to be a call up? Does he need to take his spot from someone? I don't know. I do feel like though, if you are setting the AHL point, like leading that pack, you should be getting an NHL call up at certain points, at least to see what you can do.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I do believe Carcone has a role with the Coyotes.
Yeah,
Like, he is 100% a guy you can call up and be trust to call up and perform at the NHL level if need be. But I do believe that he is like that right now at this very time. He is best served with Tucson. And I think, especially with people, like I mentioned, with the people coming into Tucson next year, I think he can be that great, teacher to them.
Yeah. I mean, definitely seems like a good, player to keep with the Roadrunners. He has that AHL experience. He can be a mentor figure. I just don't necessarily want him to be leading the points next year. I want him to earn a spot with the big club. Like he's 26. It seems like now is the time where like he needs to hit, because
Yeah.
you don't necessarily want to be the guy who's just only good in the AHL. You do want him to take that next level, even if it's being like a third liner versus a top liner in the AHL.
Oh yeah. I mean, the amount of money you're making, first of all, in one or the other,
Yeah.
is a lot.
Absolutely night and day. We could talk about that. His minor salary, just for example, 150,000, impressive. His NHL 750,000. So
Which
that's
is
a
the minimum.
difference of $600,000. Yes.
Yep, exactly. I mean, I'm sure he would definitely, enjoy getting the call up,
Yeah.
and I think it'd definitely be very well deserved, especially again with the year that he had with Tucson. I think he would be amazing.
Yeah. I mean, I feel like you either have to like call him up or like trade him at the deadline to like a team that you think could be NHL ready. He's 26 years old. This is the time where he should be hitting. And he definitely has that leadership role in Tucson. But, I think if we're talking about the Tucson Roadrunners next year, we have to confront the very real possibility the Coyotes are going to steal some more players.
It's gonna happen.
It's going to
It's gonna
happen.
happen without a doubt. And to me, it excites me, but that also upsets me because it excites me because like, hey, I get to see we get to see some young blood coming up to the Coyotes, and we get to see the future grow. But I covered the Roadrunners for so long
Yeah.
that I love to see when the team is good. Like I loved those years where, you know, that 2018 year was the first year I covered the Roadrunners full time, and they that was a special team. That was a really exciting team to watch. Um,
I mean, it's a trade off when you're a fan of an AHL team. Your favorite players usually end up getting taken by the big club, but you get to have some of the coolest jerseys. Like if you have a Roadrunners, like a Roadrunners Dylan Strome jersey, that's going to be really like a really good find in the next couple of years. If you have a Portland Pirates Oliver Ekman Larson, I kind of love you a little.
oh,
Like just having an
no, no,
NHL
without a
player.
doubt, I'm sure there's a decent amount of I say a decent amount, like truly a decent amount of Roadrunners fans out there who currently have a Roadrunners Josh Jones jersey.
Yeah, I that is definitely a good one. You are gonna want to have a Doan Roadrunners
Yeah.
jersey.
But on a similar note, that's for the fans. But
Yeah,
as someone who covered the team as media, like, you know, it was awesome. It's awesome to kind of see to interview those players before they make it to the NHL,
yeah.
right? Getting a chance to interview Dylan Strome, Lawson Krause, Connor Garland, Josh Doan, like
Did you see
see
Strom had a baby? Like wrote a kid's book. That seems astonishing for like we're talking about his AHL days.
he's the same age as me. Like
I'm not gonna lie. I think professional athlete, he's got a took a different
I
path
know,
with
but
you in the game of life.
like, you're always one of those people that likes that just like hates comparing, but you do it anyways.
Yeah. Don't worry. I watched Citizen Kane when I turned 29.
Nice.
Let's wrap this one up. Sorry to derail.
Oh, all good, all good. Anyways, we're out of time on this episode of Locked On Coyotes, though. If you like what you heard, don't forget to leave a review, like, comment, subscribe if you have yet to already. We're available everywhere you get your podcasts, including on YouTube. If you liked any of our Roadrunners content and want us to continue, please let us know. When you leave a comment, let us know that if you want us to continue talking about the Roadrunners. We'll probably do that. Hopefully, try to do more next season. But if you don't forget to interact with us on social media, we're on Facebook, facebook.com/lockedoncoyotes, and on Twitter at LO_coyotes. I'm personally at Robyn_Leano. Carl Pavlock is at 5 for Howling. Interact with us, ask a question you might have, we might answer right back, or in a future episode of the Locked On Coyotes podcast. Thanks again, everyone, for listening to today's episode. Hope you guys staying safe out there. Hope you guys staying healthy. And don't forget to howl on.